3 programs that we're doing in this gorgeous room. I can't believe we're here. So we'd like to thank Alan Montgomery and everybody here at Riverside Church that's made this possible. And we'd like to start today's program with the music for the Royal Fireworks by Handel. This is one of Handel's most popular works, and it has been since the very first time it was performed in 1747 at a giant outdoor concert with fireworks to celebrate the end of the War of the Austrian Succession, which not too many people know about, but at the time it was the closest thing to a world war that Europe had experienced. Most of the major powers were involved, and wouldn't it be nice to throw a giant party for the end of a war? That's my thought right now. And it is in 5 movements. It begins with a gigantic overture, and then has 4 little pieces: a bourrée, a character piece called la paix, which means peace, la réjouissance, which means the rejoicing, and then it ends with a little pair of minuets. And of course, at the original performance, and traditionally since then, it has been performed by enormous bands and orchestras. I think that was largely a function of the fact that it was outdoors for thousands and thousands of listeners. The music actually works very well in this small format. You'll be surprised. So this is the Fireworks music by Handel. After a little tune. incomparable geniuses that happen to be born in the same year, is who their music was written for. Handel's music was largely tailored for the public, the masses in the case of the piece we just heard. Bach, by contrast, wrote for a couple of aristocratic patrons and then for the congregation at his churches. And we're about to play one of his pieces of chamber music, probably written when he was working at Gotham for an aristocrat. And it is for violin and continuo. And for those of you that are, I guess maybe at least a couple of you are here for the first time, haven't heard us before. Am I right? Yes, I see some nodding. Okay, so House of Time performs all this music on what we call period instruments or original instruments, meaning what they had back then. And so instead of a piano, we have a harpsichord, in this case a beautiful copy of a French instrument, originally a Flemish 17th century instrument that was enlarged in the 18th century. That's what that's a copy of. Man's playing a cello with no end pin, gut strings, a Baroque bow, which is different shape, more like a bow and arrow kind of thing than like a concave modern bow. So the tension is not all even from tip to tip. That gives it a sort of natural, it's easier to play, well, like what you're hearing today, rather than the endless flows of sound that the modern bow was designed to produce. The pianist playing an original old Italian instrument from the 1720s, I believe. And I'm going to switch now to a guitar. This is a Baroque guitar, also Italian. This might be the world's oldest guitar that's out there playing concerts. Yeah, there's things like this in museums. This one's here now. The piece we're about to play, like a lot of what you hear today, is written in fewer parts than you see people. There's 2 written lines, and the 3 of us are going to have to share one of them. And Tatiana gets the lion's share of all the notes here. This is an unusual piece in that it's not quite a sonata. It's actually called a partita on the manuscript. And that implies dances. And sure enough, it starts out like a sonata with this fabulous opening prelude of arpeggiated, non-stop violin 16th notes. Then a very quirky adagio that is really, it tests the outer limits of Baroque harmony, let's just say. And then 2 dances, an allemand and a gite. But dances as only Bach could write them. In other words, not what you would hear at the Saturday night dance. going back now to music by Handel, and this is a sonata for oboe that was long thought to be, well, because it was published as a flute sonata in E minor. And then in the 20th century, this manuscript showed up and everybody went, oh, of course it was for oboe all along. And I hope that you understand why this should have been obvious when you hear the second movement, when the oboe imitates a trumpet. There's much more going on there than just trumpet calls, but that's basically the personality of the instrument that has to play this piece. And the oboe imitates the trumpet relatively well, even though it can play a whole lot more notes than a trumpet can, at least the trumpets of that time. And it is curiously similar to the piece that we just heard in terms of just the form. Because it starts out like a sonata with an adagio, then an allegro, and another adagio, and then it finishes with a couple of little dances. A completely unimpressive, but I think charming way to end what starts out to be a sort of virtuosic kind of piece. Another feature of a lot of Handel's compositions is that you can find alternate versions for a couple of these movements. The first movement actually comes from the third act of his, I believe it was his first or second opera that he wrote in Italy when he was extremely young, called Rodrigo. And this piece is sung by the hero's girlfriend while the hero is languishing in a dungeon. In other words, a classic third act Baroque opera situation. And the third movement is, I haven't identified it yet. Maybe one of you can help me. I'm sure he didn't just write it for the oboe because it's a nice tune. So here's Handel's oboe sonata in F. Yes. I didn't mention it when I talked about the instruments. What I'm playing here is your standard issue high Baroque oboe. This is just what Handel or Bach or Vivaldi or any of the composers of that time would have had. Only 2 keys, and it's basically like a chair leg with holes. And the trick is drilling the holes just right. And the other trick is making one of these little things, a reed, that will actually make a sound that you'd want to listen to. So, yeah. Part of it is the instrument maker, and the other part is the player. Put it all together, it's a musical instrument, believe it or not. now going to turn over the proceedings to Elliot for two sonatas by Domenico Scarlatti, whose career was, again, entirely different from Bach's and Handel's. He had the smallest audience of all. He wrote hundreds of sonatas just for the King and Queen of Spain, who were his employers, and had essentially no influence outside of that very tiny little circle at El Escorial near Madrid. And his music consists almost entirely of keyboard sonatas that he wrote at that job, and a few cantatas that he wrote before he left Italy. Anything you want to add? Yeah. Anyway. very much for joining us. If you enjoyed this program and you want to tell your friends about it, we have 2 concerts, Saturday and Sunday.
Friday and Saturday.
Friday and Saturday. Thank you. I'm glad I didn't double book myself. And that's our annual Bach by Candlelight program, where we're obviously playing a lot of Bach, including the 2 Bach works that you hear on this program. And you can find out more at our website, houseoftimemusic.org. And also, we have 2 more programs in this fabulous space. I'm already looking forward to it. The next one is music that you might have heard if you happen to be a guest of Louis XIV in his private apartments. You can fantasize, right? And the other one covers a little bit more chronological ground. It is all music by Italian women composers from the very early 17th century, going all the way to the mid-18th century, with selections from an opera that I've never seen scheduled or performed anywhere, by the tantalizing title, Hercules the Lover. Ercole Amante. So, I can't wait for that one. We're going to finish this program with a real favorite work of ours. This is a piece that some of you might know as the Sonata for Harpsichord and Viola da Gamba in G minor by Bach. Now, we have 3 works by Bach for that unusual combination of viola da gamba and obbligato harpsichord. And for one of them, we actually have an alternate version for a more normal scoring, which would be a trio sonata formation like this one. This one, there is no alternate version for it, and it sparked a lot of speculation because it really gives the impression of being somehow reduced from a larger format. I've seen lots of putative reconstructions of concertos for various instruments using this as the basis. I think we're all barking up the wrong tree with that, because when Bach returned to his own music, he always expanded it. He always made it more elaborate, more complex, added parts. He never went back, I don't think, to my knowledge, and did, well, what I did to the fireworks music, which is, in essence, a reduction. Bach just didn't work like that. So I think that if there is an original, other than the very traditional version that's played, it is probably something like this, because the music is written in 3 parts, 2 trebles, 1 bass. So I think we are, if not playing what we think is the original version, then at least we are returning it to the format that the Gamba Sonata ostensibly emulates, which is a trio sonata. I think Bach's expectation with those kind of pieces, he wrote many of them, is that you would have heard enough trio sonatas to sort of do the imaginative work in your brain, so that the gamba is equivalent to the right hand of the harpsichord. Right? That takes a little bit of imagining. And even more imagination is taken is required to imagine that the left hand of the harpsichord is actually a whole continuous section with fully fleshed out harmonies, like what you get here. So, long story short, if you get the quiz later, a Baroque trio sonata requires 4 people at least.